Cover crops, or green manure crops, are exceptionally vigorous plants that are grown primarily to improve soil. They're usually the cheapest and most ecologically sound way for farmers and gardeners to improve and maintain the fertility of their soil. Cover crops improve soil in different ways. First, they all protect soil from erosion. Then also, they all capture carbon dioxide from the air, where it's driving climate change, and put it into the soil as beneficial organic matter. As much as a third of the carbon that plants capture from the air is passed directly into the soil through their roots as sugary compounds that feed the soil life. In addition, atmospheric carbon is also captured as organic matter in the roots, stems, and leaves of the cover crop plants. Soil bacteria and fungi feast on this organic matter. Protozoans then feast on the bacteria and excrete the excess nitrogen in plant-friendly forms. To give a sense of the scale of all this feasting, there can be millions of protozoans in a teaspoon of soil, and each one can eat up to 10,000 bacteria a day. Who does all this counting? Beyond capturing carbon, cover crops in the legume or pea family have an additional and an extremely valuable ability. In cooperation with rhizobia bacteria that form nodules on their roots, legumes can capture nitrogen from the air and convert it into forms that are useful to plants. Cover crops with powerful taproots, like turnips and radishes, can create openings in hard subsoils, allowing the roots of crops that follow to grow deeper. Cover crops in the grass family form dense mats of roots near the soil surface. As the plants die, these roots feed beneficial bacteria and fungi and leave millions of little passageways for air and water to move through the soil. Almost all cover crops are essentially leaf crops in that they work best when the plants are cut down before flowering or forming seeds. Unfortunately, many of the most effective green manure crops have inedible or even toxic leaves. This includes buckwheat, velvet bean, sward and jack bean, fish bean, and sun hemp. However, there are many other good cover crops that have leaves that are edible and can serve as leafy green vegetables. Generally, you can harvest up to about 1/3 of the leaves of these cover crop plants to eat as vegetables while still retaining much of their soil improving capacity. When you harvest 1/3 of the leaves for your kitchen, the remaining 2/3 of the leaves, plus all the stems and roots, plus the liquid carbon passed through the roots, still go to build organic matter in the soil. This strategy simultaneously addresses two serious food system problems: declining soil fertility and the lack of vegetables, especially leafy green vegetables, in our modern diet. The potential of this strategy is greatest for low-income smallholders and subsistence farmers. While they are often aware that cover crops could improve the fertility of their soil, their economic circumstances may be too precarious to allow for them to take any land out of food production so that the cover crops can rejuvenate their soil. Eventually, choosing food production over soil health leads to declining fertility and even worse economic circumstances. These growers might be able to bypass this either-or quandary by using part of the cover crop to improve their family's diet and health. An enterprising grower might find ways to sell some of these leafy greens harvested from her cover crops. The Leaf for Life website has suggestions for making a variety of leaf-enriched foods, some of which could be marketed. The most important criteria for choosing edible cover crops are that they can improve the health of your soil and that they taste good enough to be eaten regularly. Our favorite plant for an edible cover crop is the cowpea. Black-eyed peas are the best known variety of this warm weather plant. Cowpea leaves are widely marketed as a vegetable in parts of Africa and Asia. As a leafy vegetable, they offer lots of nutrition and a mild flavor. As a cover crop, they grow quickly even in poor soil and with little rainfall, and produce a lot of biomass or organic matter. These nodules attached to the cowpea roots are colonies of rhizobia bacteria that can capture a lot of nitrogen from the air for crops that follow. A typical garden bed of 100 square feet can produce about 60 pounds of cowpea plants per season. Roughly 40% of the plant is leaf, 40% is stem, and 20% is root. If you harvest 1/3 of the leaves, or 8 pounds, roughly 52 pounds of the plant still goes to improve the soil. Cowpeas are also an excellent green manure intercrop, planted between rows of taller plants like corn and cassava, or in this case, between rows of tomatoes. Intercrops don't always look tidy, but they have a long history of improved production. And if you should happen to let some flower and go to seed, you'll have high protein peas for Hoppin' John and other dishes, and also seeds for the next crop. Our second place cover crop is Austrian winter peas. They are a cool weather legume that makes a thick tangle of vines. The leaves have a delicate and delicious pea flavor. Where cold weather prevents gardening over the winter, these peas are an ideal way to prepare your soil for spring while getting a bonus vegetable crop. When they begin to make their beautiful two-tone purple flowers, we usually cut them as close to the ground as possible and leave them to rot in place. This is sometimes called chop and drop. You can cut them with a sickle or a scythe or a weed whacker. 2 or 3 weeks later, we punch holes in this layer of mulch and plant seedlings. This works much better with small plants, like this tomato, rather than with seeds that can get lost in the mulch. Barley and wheat are 2 other favorite edible cover crops. Both are cool weather crops, but neither fixes nitrogen. Instead, they produce a lot of biomass and leaves behind a dense mat of roots. Although they're well known as grains, the young leaves of both barley and wheat are eaten. Wheatgrass juice and barley leaf powder have long been available through health food stores. I'm not a big fan of wheatgrass juice, but find barley leaf powder to have a very pleasant flavor. These grasses can be very stringy, but if you cut them before they flower, then blend them into smoothies or dry and grind to a powder, they are easy to incorporate in many different recipes. Or you can simply sprinkle the dried leaf powder over rice or popcorn for extra vitamins and minerals. You can accelerate the soil improvement by planting barley and wheat in close rows with 2 inches of compost placed between them. Other cover crops whose leaves can be eaten include fenugreek, a popular leafy vegetable in India, hyacinth bean, rice bean, scarlet runner bean, and butterfly pea. These are all good nitrogen-fixing legumes. Other than fenugreek, the flavor of these leaves is not as good as that of cowpeas or winter peas, in my opinion. Among non-legume edible cover crops are turnips and mustard, whose greens are well-known vegetables. Forage radish, rape or canola, and sugar beets are other non-legume cover crops that can be eaten. So far, all the cover crops mentioned have been grown as annuals that need to be replanted each year. A couple of perennial plants that can be used as edible cover are pigeon peas and moringa. Pigeon pea is a beautiful plant that fixes nitrogen and can be cut back many times. Unfortunately, while they're edible, pigeon pea leaves are not tasty. Moringa, on the other hand, cannot fix nitrogen, but the leaves are used as a vegetable in much of the tropics and lately as a health food in the US and Europe. Moringa is an incredibly productive and fast-growing tropical tree from India. In frost-free climates, it grows year-round for many years without replanting. And moringa leaves have enough protein, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants to put them near the very top of any nutrition chart. There are a lot of different schemes for growing moringa. It produces the most leaves when grown close together and harvested several times a year. We use a coppice system, cutting the tree down to less than knee height 2 or 3 times a year. We usually then strip most of the leaves and small branches from the moringa and then carry them off to use either as a high-value mulch or to heat up our compost piles. This is called a cut and carry system. Of course, we always set some aside for using in soup and drying to make green pasta. There's good information online and from agricultural extension services about which cover crops or green manure to grow and how to grow them. Choosing ones that also produce edible leaves can expand your possibilities. Both your body and all your garden crops will benefit. Thanks for watching.